Bible Study Guide, Day 33. Exodus 10-12. As the story of Moses and Pharaoh continues, we see that Pharaoh still refuses to let the Israelites go despite experiencing several devastating plagues. In chapter 10, Moses warns Pharaoh of a plague of locusts that will destroy all the crops and vegetation in the land if he does not release the Israelites. Pharaoh's officials ask him to let the Israelites go, recognizing the severity of the situation. Pharaoh summons Moses and Aaron and asks them who will be going on this journey with them. Moses responds that everyone, including the children and livestock, will go to worship their God in the wilderness. Pharaoh again refuses to let them go. The plague of locusts comes upon Egypt, covering everything in its path and destroying all the crops and vegetation. This is a huge blow to the Egyptian economy, as agriculture is their main source of livelihood. Pharaoh quickly calls for Moses and Aaron to plead for forgiveness from God and to ask for the locusts to be removed. God responds by sending a strong wind that blows all the locusts into the Red Sea, sparing Egypt from complete devastation. However, Pharaoh's heart remains hardened, and he still refuses to let the Israelites go. After Pharaoh breaks his promise yet again, God sends a plague of darkness upon Egypt. This darkness is so thick that it can be felt, and it lasts for 3 days. In the midst of the darkness, the Israelites have light in the places where they live. This is a symbol of God's protection and provision for his people. Even when everything around them is dark and chaotic, God is their light and guide. Pharaoh summons Moses once again and says to take their people to go worship their God, but to leave their livestock behind. Moses insists that they must take all of their animals to make sacrifices to God. However, Pharaoh's heart remains hardened, and he still refuses to let the Israelites go. God warns Moses that he will send one final plague upon Egypt that will finally convince Pharaoh to let the Israelites go. As the Israelites prepare to leave, God instructs them to ask their Egyptian neighbors for silver and gold jewelry, which the Egyptians gladly give them. This is God's way of providing for the Israelites as they prepare to leave their oppressors and start a new life. God then reveals to Moses and Aaron that he will strike down all the firstborn in Egypt, from Pharaoh's son to the lowliest servant. He also gives specific instructions for the Israelites to follow in order to avoid this plague. God instructs Moses and Aaron to tell the Israelites to take a lamb for each household, slaughter it, and put some of its blood on the doorframes of their houses. The blood will be a sign for God to pass over that household and spare them from the plague. They are to eat the meat roasted over fire, with bitter herbs and bread made without yeast. This is to be a lasting ordinance for the Israelites to remember how God delivered them from slavery in Egypt. This is known as the first Passover, where God shows his power and protection over his people. This event also foreshadows the ultimate sacrifice of Jesus as the Lamb of God who takes away the sins of the world. The Israelites follow God's instructions, and at midnight the plague strikes down all the firstborn in Egypt, including Pharaoh's son. Pharaoh finally relents and urges Moses and Aaron to take their people and leave. The Israelites gather their belongings and quickly depart, taking the silver, gold, and clothing given to them by the Egyptians. Roughly 600,000 men, plus women and children, leave Egypt and begin their journey to the Promised Land. This marks the beginning of the exodus of the Israelites from Egypt, after 430 years in captivity. God's promises to Abraham are now being fulfilled as he leads his people towards the Promised Land. God gives specific instructions to the Israelites on how to observe the Passover meal. If foreigners want to celebrate the Passover, they must be circumcised and follow all of God's commands. This shows that everyone who wants to be part of God's people must fully commit and follow his ways. The meal must be eaten inside the house, and no bones of the lamb must be broken. This is a reminder to the Israelites that their deliverance from Egypt was not their own doing, but it was solely by God's power and grace. It also foreshadows Jesus' death on the cross, where his bones were not broken. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to help us spread the word. God bless you.